book in the mail. It's a textbook that I'm going to be using for one of the courses. And it's called God is a Verb, Kabbalah and the Practice of Mystical Judaism. But God is a Verb. That just really, when I read that, I was like, that is so cool. I love that concept of God as a verb, not as a noun. And Chris kind of urged me that I should talk about this today. So this got me into thinking in a conversation that ensued yesterday about, so what is a verb? You know, a verb is, it's about action, right? It's a word that's an action word. But what is a noun, and how do we use it in a sentence? And then I really started feeling very inferior and very stupid and not intelligent, because suddenly I realized that I don't really understand the mechanics of grammar. And I was like, well, I know that a noun is a person, place, or a thing, and I know that a verb is about action. So I looked it up, and of course, a verb, it says, is not only about an action, but it's also a state of being, it says. So, according to this author, and I haven't read the book yet, just the title, God is a verb, not a noun. In other words, like, so God is not then a person, place, or a thing. I really love this, because this is right in alignment with the Hindu teachings that I believe in, the Hindu tradition that talks about the concept of non-duality. Very different from my original upbringing. Now, I love my roots in this embodiment. My Catholic tradition and Catholic background has formed just an amazing foundation for me. But back then, there was an understanding that God was a noun. That God not was, but is, God is a noun, meaning that, like, so God is there, and I am here, and I pray to God, right? And that God's sort of like, not feelings about me, but maybe behavior toward me is really dependent on my behavior. And maybe that was a misinterpretation of the true universal truth of that particular tradition, but at least that's the way it was conveyed to me, especially by my mother. And the nuns. I guess you can relate. When God is a noun, there's some expectations. Like, God must have a gender, look a certain way, live in a certain place, and that God is there. This dualistic thinking implies that I am separate from this entity, separate from God. And if I'm separate from God, then I'm separate from you. We're siblings. And there's a lot of sibling rivalry. And there's a lot of resentment. And there's a lot of expectation. And there's a lot of, this is mine, not yours. There's a lot of name and form. So this whole concept of, like, God as a noun really creates a whole bunch of problems, in a way. Now, I also was taught, like, that there's a lot of adjectives. Now, here's another, the mechanics of grammar. An adjective describes a noun. Chris just taught me that. Just because I have a PhD, it's in social work, first of all. It's not in English. She told me to not share with you completely all of the things that I said yesterday, because she said that you'd really think I was an idiot.
Not how I said it.
But adjectives describe nouns, and so we describe God, often hearing, like, God is all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing. And in our limited explanation of this noun, God becomes sort of a category, limited. Like, we explain God, we describe God, but we limit God, because God is a noun. Now, as we've seen over the entire span of the human existence, there's a lot of groups of people that have killed over this category of who they think God is. And I get really uncomfortable in this particular case, I get uncomfortable when I hear people say, my God loves me. My God protects me. I always feel like inside I want to say, my God loves me more. Because again, it becomes about this separateness. This becomes about this noun. It becomes about this object that I can sort of like possess. You know, no, my God loves me. That's a dualistic notion to me, and I think an immediate setup for separateness. So what if God is a verb? And I really am looking forward to reading the book. And I don't want you to think that I just read like the titles of books and then summarize what the book is about. I really have no idea what this guy is talking about in the book, except that this sentence, this title is like so intriguing to me. So what if God is a verb, right? God is an action. What if God is a state of being? That God is, and that I am that. So there's no separateness, only oneness. And you know, as I awaken to my higher self, and I go into that, what the meditation was about, sort of like this awareness of, this waking up, this remembering of the true nature of who I am, just the awareness of presence alone. I think we've done this before, this like interactive part of the sermon where I ask you to like take your hands and put your hands out for a minute. Just, if you don't mind, just sort of do that. And just feel that. Feel that energy. There's presence. Thank you. That's it. And it's in the breath, and it's in the now, and it's in the shift of perspective. We've heard the Christian scripture, God is love. But that's not an adjective necessarily describing the noun of God. That is God. And that is us. No separateness, no difference. So when I love you, and not love you like, because this gets me in trouble too. Love you, I love you, and then I have expectations of you because I'm thinking that you're separate from me, and there's things that I'm going to expect you to give me that you don't give me, and then I get resentful, and now I have to forgive you, and it's... So that's like not the love that I'm really talking about. Like, and that's where I get confused. It reminds me of Reiki. And the way I was taught is that, you know, Reiki is a state of being, and that you tap into Reiki. It's got nothing to do with me, this name and form, this body. And in the same way, channeling has nothing to do with the body, or the mind, or the intellect. It's information that resides in that state of consciousness. So that's God. And that's me, and that's you, no separateness. So what if every interaction that we had, every thought we had, every word that we spoke was in the conscious awareness that I am God. I am that presence. Not like a representative of God, like we hear a lot of, you know, I'm speaking for God. Well, that makes God the noun again, and I'm a representative, just another noun. But what if we acted as if we're God? I mean, not even acted as if, just remembered we are. You know, it's about waking up. It's about waking up to who we really are. I talked about this last night. Again, Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, Beyond. Am I right? The best movie ever made, correct? So Dorothy, like, forgot. There was an amnesia, and that's us. We get caught up and forget and think that our ego is us. That's not who we are. You know, Jesus said to his disciples, don't you know that you are God's? And you're going to do greater things than me. He said also, the heaven of God is within you. Within you. Is you, as you. yoga, we talk a lot about service of others, service to others. The divine self in me is serving the divine self in you. That bhakti yoga is about love, divine love, and it isn't about I'm here, God's there, I love God. I do love God. See, this is where it gets confusing. But in a dualistic notion, in God as a noun, then it's I am here and God is there. And my duty is to love him. Let's go beyond that. Let's go into that consciousness and into that awareness that there is no separateness. That the presence is, and I am that. So this notion then of the higher consciousness of presence that is within us is that state of being. It is that God is a verb concept. In A Course in Miracles, it says that, literally, it says, quote, the Spirit will be glad to take 5 minutes of each hour from your hands and use them around this aching world where pain and misery appear to rule. The Spirit will not overlook one open mind that will accept the healing gifts they bring. Spirit knows they will be welcome and they will increase in healing power each time someone accepts them. And it will be returned to you 1,000-fold. Expressed through you like Reiki, like channel, like mediumship. Expressed through you as a verb. When we're consciously aware of our true nature, we step into our true purpose, and then we remember why we came to Earth and why we've taken birth. There's a beautiful Mel White song, I think it goes, why have you come to Earth? And it's to love, to serve, and to remember. So to love, bhakti love, meaning that I see God in all things, that God is everywhere, in everything, even the most annoying of things. To serve through karma yoga, but to be careful not to get caught up in the ego of the service, and then the minutia of the service, and the names and the forms of the service. Because that's when we have conflict. But to allow presence to be in us, through us, as us. To be the face and the hands of God. Even to those that I feel are like not as likable. Serving and loving that which isn't really likable. And it seems easier for me to sometimes be patient with a stranger, go into Publix and smile. And people smile back. And it's great because you don't have to really interact with them, because like you don't really know them, right? I mean, isn't it true? Like the people that we love the most push our buttons because there's expectations in that. There's attachments in that. There's pleasure and pain and craving and clinging. And, oh my God, I think that somebody said once, if you think you're enlightened, now I totally says this in his book, A New Earth, and I couldn't find it, exactly who really said this. But if you think you're enlightened, go live with your family for a month. And I love my family. It isn't about that, the other night we were watching a film at the Darshan Center, and it's called One. If you ever have a chance to rent it, you should. It's called One. It's a great film. And one of the questions that comes up is, what is the meaning of life? And so we went around the room and we asked each other, so what do you think the meaning of life is? What is the meaning of life? And then when it came to me, and here's the confession part, and this comes from my Catholic background, the confession part. I know the right answer to what is the meaning of life. It is to serve, to love, and to remember who we really are. But I have to be honest with you and tell you that sometimes I don't feel like that. I don't. I get disappointed. I expectations. I want to control stuff. Oh my God, I want people, places, and things to operate in my life just the right way so that I can experience the least amount of pain and the most amount of pleasure. Can anybody relate? But people disappoint me because people don't do the things I want them to do. And I expect them to do certain things so that I will feel good, but they don't do it all the time. And sometimes I get caught up in the minutia and the illusion of this matter, and I forget that I am presence, where everything is perfect, where there's no injury, where there's no illness, where there's no expectations, where there's no wanting or needing. But hey, listen, I'm a work in progress. Keep praying for me. Keep loving me. I'm going to keep coming back. Because I need to, you know. And sometimes I think I'm further along than I actually am. But here's the thing, and I beat myself up, and that's the Catholic part too. But I beat myself up because I want to be further along, but here's the best part. The good news is that when I'm in awareness, and I catch myself forgetting, there's the enlightenment. And then there's presence. When I forget and think I'm ego, and that's all I am, name and form, ego, I'm off to the races, and my life is usually miserable. And I'm filled with a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. I'm filled with a lot of resentment. And sometimes I'm filled with a lot of anger. But when I am in that awareness place, which I really want to get there more and more often, so I'm going to keep practicing because I really think that it is a practice. When I'm in that awareness of presence, and God is a verb, and I am that, I'm in serenity. Now, so I may not be feeling it, but I'm practicing it. I used to be into karate a lot. And when I would not practice, I would totally forget all the katas, I would forget it. The more I practice, the better I got at it. So this is a practice, this remembering thing, this non-dualistic awareness, this presence, this consciousness of presence, of who I really am. It's a practice. So like a GPS, every time and it says, you know, my awareness goes, recalculating route. Make a legal U-turn, you know, and then I have to catch myself, and I do. Eckhart Tolle says that the ego isn't wrong, it's just unconscious. So when we recognize the ego in action, we begin to lose its grip, and we're beginning to go beyond it. So there's the good news. The good news is that the more I become aware that God is a verb, the more I realize that this world of names and forms, you know, this illusion that's created by the ego to fool us into thinking that we're separate from presence and that we're separate from one another, the more aware I become of that, the more I will be God is a verb, and the more I will remember that that's who I am. So when I say namaste, the divine in me